Chapter 635. Hearing Lin Jie's explanation, Shuyao didn't think too much about it. She took the elevator with Lin Jie and headed to the hot pot restaurant. However, this wasn't the first time she had noticed that something was amiss with Lin Jie, so she paid close attention to him throughout the entire meal. Other than being unable to eat too much spicy food, he didn't seem to be too different from how he usually was. By the time they were done eating the hot pot and returned to the hotel, it was only 8:30. After returning to their respective rooms, Shuyao went to take a shower to wash away the smell of the hot pot. Suddenly, she felt a craving for fruits, so she took out her phone and ordered a takeaway. Around 20 minutes later, the takeaway arrived. After Shuyao went downstairs to get the fruits, she didn't return to her room to eat alone. Instead, she knocked on Lin Jie's door. Just like when she came to look for him earlier in the evening, no one answered the door. She pressed the doorbell a few more times, but there was still no response. Perplexed, she returned to her room. She put down the fruits, picked up her phone, and gave Lin Jie a call. No one picked up. So, she sent a message. Lin Jie, I've been knocking on your door for so long. Why aren't you opening it? Lin Jie, I bought some fruits. Do you want some? Lin Jie, are you taking a shower or busy? Remember to reply to my message when you see it. Oh, you're ignoring me for so long. Are you asleep? All right then, I'll eat it alone. After sending Lin Jie a few more messages, Shuyao still didn't get a response from him. So, she opened the takeaway, grabbed a fork, and sat in front of the floor-to-ceiling window, enjoying the night view while eating the fruits. It was still early, so she didn't feel sleepy at all. After finishing a quarter of the fruits, she logged into the game. After returning to the hotel with Shuyao, Lin Jie took a shower before lying on the bed wrapped in a bathrobe. As soon as he closed his eyes, he felt as if a curse had been cast on his ears. He recalled the words Shuyao had said at the Beijing airport that afternoon. I also have someone I want to like. Someone I want to like. Someone I want to like. Those words echoed in Lin Jie's ears countless times. He suddenly sat up, took out a set of clean clothes from his luggage, and put them on. After stuffing his room card into his room, he walked out of his room and headed to the top floor's lounge to have a drink. The lounge of this hotel was beautifully designed. Through the bright windows, one could see the brightly lit city outside. While listening to the elegant music, Lin Jie admired the night view below as he sipped on his wine. However, after a few cups of wine, not only did the stifling feeling in his heart not dissipate, it even intensified. He didn't know how long he had been here alone. The phone screen that he had placed on the table lit up. It was a call from Shuyao, but he didn't pick up the call. Instead, he gulped down a glass of wine. After he put down the wine glass, his screen lit up once more. This time, it was a message from Shuyao. Lin Jie, I just knocked on your door for a long time. Why didn't you open the door? Why did she knock on his door? For a split second, Lin Jie was just about to reply to her message when he saw her new message. Lin Jie, I bought some fruits. Do you want some? Don't eat it. Lin Jie continued drinking, and soon after, he received 2 more messages from her. This time, he didn't even look at it. After he finished the wine on the table, he raised his hand and called for the waiter to bring more wine. The screen lit up again. Chapter 636. He instinctively turned to look at his phone, but before his gaze could land on the screen, he suddenly froze. As if oblivious to the fact that his phone screen had lit up, he turned to the waiter and pointed to a bottle of wine on the table and said, Another bottle? After the waiter left, Lin Jie stared blankly at the night scenery outside the window. It wasn't until the waiter brought the wine over that he finally retracted his gaze and glanced at the dark screen of his phone for a moment before pouring himself a glass of wine. After finishing it in a single gulp, he placed the glass down and continued pouring himself another glass of wine. This time, he raised the glass to his lips and took a small sip before putting it down again and picking up his phone. Lin Jie, are you taking a shower or busy? Remember to reply to my message when you see it. Oh, you're ignoring me for so long. Are you asleep? All right then, I'll finish it alone. After reading the 2 more messages from her, Lin Jie wanted to reply to her, but after tapping on the keyboard twice, he deleted the words that he had typed out and exited the message window. There was also a notification on WeChat. After tapping on it, he realized that someone from the Sexy and Frisky group had messaged him. There were already dozens of messages in there. Holding his phone in one hand, he swiped his finger across the screen and browsed through them one by one. Yao loves ice cream, everyone. Does anyone want to play? Tide. Nope. I'm having supper with my wife. Juice. Let's finish this bowl of dog food, and we'll still be good friends. Yao loves ice cream. This round of dog food, I'm swallowing it whole. Expert of the monkeys shared a game room in the group. Come on, let's play. Perhaps due to Shi Yao and Lu Binlai entering the game, the group fell silent. Just as Lin Jiej was about to exit the group chat, a new message popped up on the screen. Juice, boss, we're lacking one player. Are you coming? Ignoring Lu Binlai, Lin Jiej was just about to exit WeChat when another notification popped up. This time, it wasn't a message from someone in the Sexy and Frisky group. Instead, it was a private message from Shi Yao. Guru, do you want to play? No way. Lin Jiej grumbled in his heart as he raised his wine cup and gulped down all of the wine in it. By the time he put down his wine glass, a new notification had popped up on his screen. It was the game room that Shi Yao had shared with him. Lin Jiej averted his gaze away and refilled his glass once more, after which he gulped down the wine in his glass once more. This time, after putting down the glass, his fingers fell straight onto the screen of his phone. After entering the game, Lin Jiej didn't say a word to Shi Yao, Lu Binlai, and Xia Shangzhou. Zhang Xian was a reticent gamer, so the trio didn't think that there was anything wrong with his words. After Zhang Xian was done preparing, Lu Binlai, the owner of the house, tapped on the button to start the game. Chapter 637. Juice. Boss, why aren't you getting in my car? I'm really sad. Woo-woo. Expert of the monkeys. You're disgusting. You're a grown man. So why are you crying? Do you believe me when I say that I'll kill you with a single punch? Juice. I'm doing it willingly. What do you have to do with your grandpa? Woo. Expert of the monkeys. It's no wonder boss isn't getting in my grandson's car. Even I'm tempted to put justice before family. Not only was Lin Jiej used to Lu Binlai and Xia Shangzhou bickering over the slightest disagreement, even Shi Yao was so calm that it was as if the two of them were talking about, did you eat today? What did you eat? Or something as simple as that. It didn't take long for the car to catch up to Lin Jiej, and it slowed down to follow him. Expert of the monkeys. Boss, get in. Juice? Didn't say a word, but he continued to press on the car's horn. On the other hand, Lin Jiej turned a deaf ear to the noises coming from the other end of the phone. Maintaining a straight line, he continued running forward. Yao loves ice cream. That's weird. Why isn't the guru getting in the car? Is it because his voice isn't on, so he can't hear us? Expert of the monkeys. That makes sense. Yao loves ice cream. Let me type and ask him. A second after Shi Yao said those words, Lin Jiej saw a line of words appear on the screen. Yao loves ice cream. Guru, get in. Ignoring her, Lin Jiej continued driving forward. Expert of the monkeys. That's weird. What's wrong with our boss? Could it be that he's not in the car because he's on autopilot? Juice, wait for me to knock our boss over. It's not like he'll die from an accident. Lu Binlai's words sounded in Lin Jiej's ears through the earpiece. In the game, Lin Jiej was standing on top of a car. Just as Lin Jiej was about to jump back to the ground, a gunshot came from the southwest direction, piercing through his level 3 helmet and knocking him to the ground. Juice. Damn. There's someone in the southwest direction. Expert of the monkeys. Get out of the car. Get out of the car. Hide behind the car. Boss, crawl over here and let Sis Yao save you. Juice and I will torture them. After being knocked down, Lin Jiej happened to land in a safe position behind the car. Shi Yao seemed to have heard Xia Shangzhou's instructions. After jumping out of the car, she immediately ran up to him and crouched down to try to save him. However, after her hand was placed on his head for less than 2 seconds, he crawled on the spot twice, interrupting her rescue. She reached out again to save him. He continued to climb. 2 times in a row. Yao loves ice cream, Guru. Don't move around. I won't be able to save you if you do that. I don't need her to save me. With such thoughts in mind, Lin Jiej dashed out of the car. Since they were in the blue zone, his health bar was dropping at a rapid rate. By the time he crawled to a place with no cover, Someone from the team that was fighting against Xiaoshang, Zhou, and Lu Binlai had already turned him into a crate. Then, a sentence appeared on the screen. Come to the bowl, eliminated. 111,111, with UMP 5. Juice. There's something wrong with our boss. Expert of the monkeys. There's definitely something wrong. Chapter 638. Juice, babe? Expert of the monkeys. Are you trying to coax me? As the two of them asked the same rhetorical question, a merciless laugh came from the headset. Juice, Xiao? That's the funniest and most ridiculous thing I've ever heard to describe our boss. Expert of the monkeys. Same here. Juice, Xiao, can I interview you for a moment? How in the world did you manage to equate the word babe with our boss? Expert of the monkeys. Coax me? What kind of person is our boss? He's a cold and aloof person. So how did he become coaxing me? Yao loves ice cream, harumphed coldly by Lu Binlai and Xia Shangzhou's teasing. She spoke up in dissatisfaction. That's right. What did I say wrong? I called him over to pick up the things, but he refused to come. I passed the things to him, but he refused to pick them up. I called him over and over again, but he refused to get into the car. And even when he was beaten to death, he refused to let me save him. That's clearly it's Sundra, just like a little girl who acts coquettishly. Babe is unhappy, so hurry up and coax me. Coax me, and I'll be happy as long as you coax me. A little girl who acts coquettishly. Is that how you describe me? Lin Jiej's face immediately darkened. Xia Shangzhou and Lu Binlai's laughter grew even louder. Ever since Lin Jiej heard Shi Yao's words toward Liang Juxi's cousin at Beijing International Airport, he had been feeling extremely displeased. However, with Shi Yao around, he was afraid that he would lose his composure and say something outrageous to her. So, he had been trying his best to suppress the displeasure in his chest, trying his best to appear normal before Shi Yao. Hearing Xia Shangzhou and Lu Binlai's laughter, his lips moved without any hesitation. He wanted to vent all the pent-up emotions he had been feeling the entire afternoon. You too. He only said 2 words, and before he could even express the pressure in his tone, he heard an ayah in his earpiece. It was Shi Yao's voice. Without any hesitation, he immediately shut his mouth. SSSS, it was from Shi Yao again. Before Lin Jiej could say anything, Xia Shangzhou, who had also noticed that something was amiss, asked, Xiao, what's wrong? Shi Yao only managed to utter a single word before she sucked in a cold breath. Then, she heard the dull sound of something falling to the ground. Then, it sounded like a phone had fallen to the ground. Xiao, Yao Shi. However, there was still no response from Shi Yao. Lin Jiej abruptly shot to his feet, but due to his excessive strength, he knocked into the table in front of him, knocking over a bottle of wine and splattering alcohol all over his body. Paying no heed to it at all, he called out with a slightly hoarse voice, "Attendant." Then, without waiting for the attendant to respond, he said, "I'll pay the room bill," before rushing over to the front desk, signing his name, and making his way to Shi Yao's room. He pressed the doorbell several times, but no one came to open it. He had to run back to his room and call the front desk. It had only been 2 minutes since he hung up the phone, but he had already rushed the front desk several times. When the attendant finally appeared with the room card in hand, Lin Jiej was so anxious that he didn't even wait for the attendant to swipe the card. He quickly snatched the card from the front desk, swiped the door open, and dashed into the room. Chapter 639. Yao Yao. As soon as those 2 words left his mouth, he had already rushed to her side and asked, "Yao Yao, what's wrong?" Her face was frighteningly pale, and her forehead was covered in beads of sweat. There was no color on her lips either. When she heard his voice, she tried to speak, but she only managed to squeeze out a single word, "Pain." "Pain? Where does it hurt?" Lin Jiej asked as he glanced at Shi Yao's abdomen. "Stomach pain?" After asking that question, he raised his head to look at the surroundings before rushing to the bed. He took out her identity card from her bag and shoved it into his pocket before returning to her side. Bending down, he carried her up and ran out of the hotel room. "Yao Yao, bear with it. I'll bring you to the hospital right now." As he spoke, he hastened his footsteps. As they entered the elevator, He could feel Shi Yao's body trembling in his embrace. For some reason, his arms started trembling as well. As he pulled her into his embrace, he spoke once more, only to realize that even his voice was trembling. Yao Yao, don't be afraid. We'll be at the hospital right away. Even though it was already late, it was fortunate that the hotel Lin Jiej had booked was located in the most bustling area, so there was an empty car right after they left. After Lin Jiej carried Shi Yao into the car, he hurriedly said hospital to the driver before lowering his head and coaxing the young lady in his embrace with a gentle voice. Soon, they arrived at the hospital. Lin Jiej registered for a consultation, and Shi Yao was taken away by the doctor. The examination didn't take too long, but Lin Jiej paced back and forth in the corridor in a state of panic. When the doctor came out, Lin Jiej immediately rushed over and asked, "Doctor, how is she?" "She's fine. It's just acute gastroenteritis. I've prescribed some medicine for her, and she'll be able to go home and rest after she's done with the 4-drip. Lin Jiej asked doubtfully, "Are you sure? She's already in so much pain that her body is trembling, and she's sweating profusely. How can she possibly be able to go home and rest? Do you know how to treat patients? Which medical school did you graduate from? What degree? Do you have a diploma? Where's your principal? Call your principal over." The doctor shot Lin Jiej a sideways glance. "You can either stay here and watch over her, or I'll call the security to send you away." Lin Jiej opened and closed his mouth, but in the end, he still decided to back down and head to the ward. Shi Yao was already hooked up to an 4-drip. Perhaps it was still a little painful, but she curled up into a small ball on the bed. Lin Jiej sat by her side, watching over her closely. Every once in a while, he would ask, "Does it still hurt?" In the end, perhaps due to the effects of the 4-drip taking effect, Shi Yao fell asleep. When the 4-drip was over, the nurse came to remove the needle, and she was woken up by the noise. Lin Jiej glared at the nurse in displeasure as she left the ward. Only then did he pick up Shi Yao and leave the hospital. Acute gastroenteritis left just as quickly as it came. After the 4-drip, other than feeling a little exhausted, Shi Yao was no longer in as much pain as before. She wanted to walk on her own, but Lin Jiej wouldn't let her. She didn't argue with him, nor did she have the strength to argue with him. Thus, she allowed him to carry her onto the taxi. On the way back to the hotel, Shi Yao realized that there was a heavy stench of alcohol on Lin Jiej. Frowning, she raised her head, which was pressed against his chest, and asked, "Did you drink?" Lin Jiej replied with an mm. Shi Yao was just about to ask why he was drinking, but before she could say anything, she suddenly realized that Lin Jiej was only wearing a single shoe. Chapter 640. Lin Jiej replied with an mm. Shi Yao was just about to ask why he was drinking, but before she could say anything, she realized that Lin Jiej was only wearing a single shoe. His feet were covered in dirt, and there were many places on his feet that were stained with blood. From the looks of it, he must have been walking barefoot for a long time. Did he lose his shoe while carrying me to the hospital? In an instant, an indescribable emotion filled Shi Yao's heart. She stared at his feet for a long while before she finally moved her fingers. Then, she realized that his clothes were terribly wet. She frowned and turned around. His usually clean and tidy white t-shirt had a large patch of water on it. As he was relatively close to her, she moved her head closer to the patch of water, and she caught a whiff of the strong stench of alcohol on his clothes. In just a few short seconds, Shi Yao realized that his clothes weren't drenched by water, but by the wine that had spilled on them. She had stayed with him for a month, so she had a good understanding of his daily habits. He loved cleanliness to the point that it made one's hair stand on end. Yet, he was actually willing to accompany her in the hospital for several hours while wearing dirty clothes. Staring at the patch of water on Lin Jiej's clothes, Shi Yao couldn't help but tighten her grip on them as she bit her lips. Lin Jiej, who was hugging her, noticed the slight stiffness in her body, so he lowered his head anxiously and asked, "What's wrong? Does it hurt again?" "I told you that the doctor is a quack." Without waiting for Shi Yao to speak, Lin Jiej turned to the taxi driver and said, "Sir, let's go to the hospital. We'll go to the best hospital in your area." "No, no, no." Shi Yao was so shocked by Lin Jiej that she couldn't help but blurt out the word "no" several times. Seeing that one of them was willing to go, the taxi driver was at a loss as to what to do. He slowed down the car and asked, "Are you going or not?" Fearing that Lin Jie would say something, Yao raised her hand to cover his mouth before replying to the taxi driver. "Sir, I'm sorry, but we're not going to the hospital. We'll be going to the hotel address I gave you earlier." It was only after the driver sped up along the original road that Yao stared at Lin Jie, whose mouth was still covered by her hand, and said, "I'm fine. There's no need to go to the hospital." As she said this, she seemed to realize something and suddenly stopped. She almost blurted out the words in her heart. "I'm just a little touched." "What?" Lin Jie asked in bewilderment. Due to her hand covering his mouth, his voice was a little muffled. Recovering from her daze, Yao replied with a casual "oh" before rolling her eyes, as if nothing had happened at all. She found a random topic to gloss over the matter and said, "I just wanted to ask why you didn't call me along when you were drinking." "How ungrateful of you." Lin Jie stumbled, not knowing how he should continue speaking. He couldn't possibly say that he was in a bad mood and went to drink, could he? How embarrassing. Lin Jie pondered for 2 seconds before replying, "I have an appointment with a client." Yao nodded in realization. "I thought you were in a bad mood, so you went drinking alone?" Chapter 641. That's hard to say. Anyone in my shoes would feel depressed at times, however. Yao didn't say those words out loud. Instead, she suddenly thought of something and changed the topic. "Right? Did you spend a lot of money on your treatment tonight?" "It's not a lot to me." Lin Jie knew that Yao loved to eat, so he often used the price of food to describe the cost to her. "But it's quite a lot for you. After all, a Haagen-Dazs ice cream a day is more than enough for you to eat for an entire month. So what if you're rich? Can you do whatever you want just because you're rich? Can you flaunt your wealth just because you're rich?" Yao puffed up her cheeks. She didn't feel like talking to Lin Jie anymore. A moment later, Yao thought that it was indeed a big deal to be rich. You can do whatever you want with money. After all, you can even afford to disregard a month's worth of Haagen-Dazs ice cream. But so what if Lin Jie is rich? Sooner or later, all of his money will end up in another woman's pocket. With this thought in mind, Yao felt a little better. So what if Lin Jie is rich and capable of earning money? By the time a woman takes him in, he'll still end up working for her. Ha ha ha. Yao was mocking Lin Jie in her heart when for some inexplicable reason, she couldn't bring herself to be happy at all. She was going to annul her engagement with Lin Jie, and it was impossible for Lin Jie to remain unmarried for the rest of his life. So, what kind of woman would marry him? Would she come from a prestigious family? Would she be very beautiful? Would she be mature and elegant? But that was weird. What was wrong with her? She clearly had someone she liked, so why would she care so much about the woman Lin Jie was going to marry in the future? While Yao was deep in thought with a deep frown, the taxi stopped at the entrance of the hotel. After paying the fare, Lin Jie carried Yao back to the hotel. He carefully placed her on the bed before asking, "Do you feel any discomfort?" Yao shook her head. "I'm fine." "Are you sure?" Yao asked impatiently. "I'm really fine." He raised his hand and stroked her head, saying, "You should rest for now. I'll head back to take a bath, and I'll come back to see you later." As if an agitated kitten had been pacified, Yao replied with a gentle mm. Lin Jie stood up and walked 2 steps toward the door. Then, as if he had suddenly thought of something, he walked over to the water bar and boiled a pot of hot water. After pouring a cup, he placed it on the bedside table beside Yao and said, "Drink some hot water first. I'll be right there." After Yao nodded her head obediently, Lin Jie took one of her room cards and left. After sleeping for a few hours in the hospital, Yao didn't feel as sleepy as before when she returned to the hotel. After Lin Jie left, she lay on her bed and looked at her phone. She noticed that there were many messages about her in the Sexy and Frisky group, and even Juice and Expert had sent her a private message. It was only then that she remembered that she had suddenly felt a stomachache in the midst of playing. She hurriedly sent a message to Expert of the Monkeys. "I'm fine." Chapter 642. It didn't take long for Juice and Expert to respond to Yao's message. Mr. Numbers was the only one who didn't respond. As it was getting late, Yao thought that Mr. Numbers was already asleep, so she exited WeChat after chatting with Juice and Expert. She first went online to search for the price of the hotel she was staying at. Then, as if fearing that she would forget about it, she grabbed her bag, took out a small notebook, and began writing on it. Barely after she finished writing, her phone suddenly rang. She put down her pen and looked at her phone. Mr. Numbers had replied to her WeChat message. Less than 111,111 aeon. What a simple reply. Yao gritted her teeth and pondered for a moment. In the end, she decided not to reply to Mr. Numbers' message. Shortly after she put down her phone, it suddenly rang again. How did you spend the National Day holiday? Yao didn't think too much into it. She thought that Mr. Numbers was just having a casual chat with her, so she tapped on the screen and replied, I came to Chengdu to eat. After his bath, he saw that Yao had sent Lin Jiej a WeChat message, so he casually replied to her 2 messages before starting to blow-dry his hair. Every now and then, he would pause to reply to Yao's messages. When he saw the words Chengdu to eat, Lin Jiej couldn't help but curl his lips. Softbun is indeed different from the rest. Others come to Chengdu to play, but she comes to eat then. He replied to Yao with a doting oh. Looking at 111,111's oh, Yao couldn't help but frown. Such a simple reply again? How was she supposed to respond to that? Just as Yao was wondering if she should reply to him with, what about you? Another message popped up on her screen. Less than 111,111 alone? Yao loves ice cream. That's not it. After replying with those 3 words, Yao typed, I came with a friend. But before she could hit send, Mr. Numbers had already replied to her message. With your fiancé? She hesitated for a moment before retracting her finger that was just about to send. She deleted the words she had just typed and replaced them with on 111,111. Not bad, a couple's holiday. Upon seeing those words, Yao's hands trembled, and she nearly smashed her phone onto the bed. Yao loves ice cream. Don't spout nonsense. He's busy here, so I just dropped by to have a bite. 111,111. Oh, 111,111. However, your relationship with your fiancé doesn't seem to be as bad as you said. It took Yao a moment to process what was going on, so she replied with a question mark. Less than 111,111. Didn't you tell me before that your fiancé wouldn't like someone like you? You even said that he likes girls with long legs, big breasts, and a sweet voice. You also said that what he values most isn't a woman's face, but a woman's butt. You also said that he's mentally unhealthy and that the probability of you being together with him is 0. Reading those words, Yao immediately understood Mr. Numbers' intentions. In truth, she was the one who had told Mr. Numbers those words. She had spoken ill of Lin Jiej many times in the past, but for Mr. Numbers to repeat them verbatim to her, she couldn't help but feel a little uncomfortable. Perhaps it was because she hadn't replied for some time, but Mr. Numbers sent another message. Question mark. Chapter 643. Yao blinked her eyes blankly. Just as she was thinking about how she should reply to Mr. Numbers' message, she caught sight of a cup of water on the bedside table from the corner of her eye. There was no longer any steam rising from the boiling water in the cup, but Yao could still feel the warmth of the water through the cup. Not too long later, she retracted her hand and typed a line of words on her phone screen before sending it back to Mr. Numbers. Can you please forget about the words you just sent me? 111,111. Question mark. 111,111. If I'm not mistaken, you're the one who told me those words? Why do you want me to forget them? Yao choked on her words, not knowing how she should reply to Mr. Numbers' message. However, she couldn't just leave it at that. She racked her brains for a moment before replying in an unreasonable manner. I'm the one who told you those words, but you mustn't forget them. In any case, you can forget them and pretend that I've never said those words to you. Today will be the last time. You mustn't mention them to anyone in the future. If I find out, I'll. She didn't know Mr. Numbers in real life, so her usual threat of, I won't eat with him, was completely ineffective against him. After pondering for a moment, Yao decided to switch to another threat. I curse you. Be careful not to starve to death. Be careful not to starve to death. Those words sound so familiar. Staring at the screen, Shi Yao tilted her head and pondered for a moment. Then, she recalled the first time Lin Jiej asked her to meet him in the forest behind her dormitory. He'd ruined 4 of her cakes, and she'd replied angrily to him. For some reason, recalling that incident, Shi Yao didn't feel as angry as she had back then. Instead, she felt an inexplicable urge to laugh. As she stared at the screen of her phone, her eyes turned soft and curled up. After blow-drying his hair and changing his clothes, Lin Jiej walked out of his room in his hotel slippers. Just as he was about to enter Shi Yao's room, the phone in his hand suddenly vibrated. Lowering his head, he saw the long message that Shi Yao had sent him. When he saw the words "be careful not to starve to death," his footsteps came to a halt. Clutching his phone, he stood in the middle of the corridor and thought back to the time in the woods when she had angrily thrown those words at him. At that time, he thought, how could there be such a cute girl in this world? Even his scolding had no offensive power at all. Did he grow up eating cuteness? Now that he saw this sentence, he realized that it had been more than half a year since she had first appeared in his eyes. In the past half a year, although he had been depressed, angry, and sad because of her, he had also been happy, excited, and excited. The myriad of emotions were far more exciting than those he had experienced in the past 18 years. It was as if he was once a piece of white paper, but because of her appearance, it became a colorful painting. Lin Jiej stood on the spot for a moment before a sentence suddenly appeared in his mind. He hadn't known her for that long, but in this period of time, to him, both you and I are beautiful. A layer of warmth crept into Lin Jiej's eyes. It took him a long while before he finally recovered from his daze. Tapping his finger on the screen, he replied to her message. Looking at your posture, I see these 4 words, Yao loves ice cream. Those 4 words? Chapter 644. Protecting her husband? Mr. Numbers is really toxic. Shi Yao's face reddened as she hurriedly replied to less than 111,111 WeChat. Why you're spouting nonsense. How am I protecting my husband? Pooey. He's not my husband. He's just my fiancé. Fiancé. Even through the screen, Lin Jiej could imagine Shi Yao's furious expression in the room. How adorable. However, this wasn't the time for him to placate her. The reason why he was willing to chat with her so much tonight was because he wanted to know how much weight he held in her heart. Thus, Lin Jiej's reply made Shi Yao even more furious. Fiancé is still my husband. I didn't say anything wrong. After successfully sending the message, Lin Jiej took a screenshot of the unreasonable message Shi Yao had sent him and circled a few key points in red. I can tell you, but you can't remember it. Today will be the last time. And be careful not to starve to death before sending it over to Shi Yao. Then, he added, look at what you've just said. You're acting so fiercely, as if you're protecting your husband. You're clearly telling me that he's your man, and you can say it, but I can't. That's not right. It's not that I can't say it, it's that I can't remember it. Even if I hear it, I can only pretend that I didn't hear it. This isn't a husband-protecting demon. This is a domineering husband-protecting demon. He's your man. Lin Jiej is her. Shi Yao couldn't understand what was wrong with her, and her face reddened even further. She really wanted to refute Mr. Number's words, but she couldn't find the words to refute him at the moment. In the end, she decided to study the message she had just sent him. Was she really that protective of Lin Jiej? After reading the message she had just sent, Shi Yao wondered if it was due to Mr. Number's influence, but she actually felt that she was being a little brainless in protecting Lin Jiej. Other than protecting Lin Jiej blindly, there was another reason. She didn't want others to misunderstand Lin Jiej, or rather, to leave even the slightest bad impression of him. She knew very well that there was no perfect person in the world. Even the most revered person in the world had flaws, and there were bound to be people who didn't like them. Yet, how could she be so muddle-headed when it came to Lin Jiej's matter? How could she think that no one would like him? She wasn't even this unreasonable to herself, right? Before Shi Yao could make sense of the situation, the screen of her phone abruptly lit up. 111,111. Why aren't you talking? Shi Yao hurriedly reined in her wandering thoughts and replied, I admit that I'm a little protective of him, but it's not exactly what you think it is. How should I put it to you? The message you sent me earlier isn't true. I thought that it was true back then, but later on, I realized that I had misunderstood him. He isn't that kind of person. He doesn't have any fetish for big butts, and he isn't mentally unhealthy either. On the contrary, I actually think that he's a good person now. He comes from a good family, and he might seem like a spoiled child, but in truth, he's very capable and hardworking. He's much more serious than most people who come from ordinary families. He's not an embroidered pillow. He's a person of great capability and character. On top of that, he's very respectful, polite, and good at taking care of others. Chapter 645. Do you know that I suddenly had a stomachache tonight? He was the one who sent me to the hospital. He carried me all the way, and even his shoes fell off. He even cut his feet. Also, he's a germaphobe, but he didn't change his clothes even though they were stained by alcohol. Enduring the stain of his clothes, he accompanied me for several hours. Actually, he's not the only one who has a problem with me. I have a problem with him as well. He had a grudge with me in the past, and it left me with a bad impression of him. From the very start, I've harbored a grudge against him, so I have a lot of personal feelings toward him. Now that I've realized that I've made a mistake, I'll have to correct it. In any case, I just hope that you can forget about those words in the future. I don't want others to misunderstand him because of me. By the time Shi Yao had finished saying what she wanted to say and sent the message, she realized that she had unknowingly typed so many words to Mr. Numbers. Perhaps it was because she had spoken too much, but Mr. Numbers didn't respond. Shi Yao lay on her bed, and when she was finally overwhelmed by drowsiness, her phone finally lit up. Less than 111,111. All right, got it. What a concise reply. Shi Yao thought as her lips twitched. Without replying to Mr. Numbers' message, she hugged her pillow and flipped over before closing her eyes. After replying to Shi Yao's message, Lin Jiej swiped across the screen and read through the several hundred words she had sent him from start to end. He read it very seriously, as if he was picking at the words, engraving them into his heart one by one. When he finished reading that long paragraph of text, he could no longer hold back the smile that surfaced on his lips. He had only wanted to test how much weight he held in Softbun's heart, but who could have thought that he would end up with such an outcome? It turned out that Softbun's view of him had changed so much. One must know that he thought that it would take a very, very long time before he could move her heart. But from the looks of it now, there was no need for him to feel so upset after hearing her words at the capital airport. Although she had a boy she wanted to like, she was slowly changing her opinion of him. As long as he continued to work hard, as long as he persevered, one day, he would replace the boy she liked, right? With such thoughts in mind, Lin Jiej read through the long string of words that Shi Yao had sent over once more. The more he read, the more agitated he became. In the middle of the night, he paced back and forth in the hotel corridor like a lunatic, but he was still unable to suppress his agitation. In the end, he picked up his phone and gave Xia Shangzhou a call. Perhaps he was asleep. No one answered. He called Lu Binlei's number, but there was still no response. How could he be the only one to be happy about such great news? He had to share it with everyone. Only then would they be brothers. Seeing that the call wouldn't go through, Lin Jiej switched to the dormitory's landline. For the first time, no one picked up. Lin Jiej tried again. He persistently dialed the number 3 times before it was finally picked up. Xia Shangzhou yawned in annoyance. Who is it? It's already the middle of the night. How can you? Before Xia Shangzhou could finish his words, Lin Jiej had already replied calmly, It's me. Xia Shangzhou's words disappeared in an instant. Chapter 646. Suppressing the ecstasy in his heart, Lin Jiej replied calmly, Oh, there's something I'd like to share with you. Lin Jiej paused for a moment before adding, It's good news. Good news? What good news? Through the phone, Lin Jiej could clearly sense Xia Shangzhou's agitation. Boss, wait a moment. Let me wake little Lai up. Little Lai, grandson. The heck? Who the hell are you calling grandson? Following Lu Binlai's displeased retort, Lin Jie heard the latter's footsteps approaching the phone. Perhaps it was because he had been woken up from his sleep, but Lu Binlai's voice sounded feeble as he asked, "Boss, what good news is it?" After making sure that the two of them were beside the phone, Lin Jie calmly replied, "Yao Yao praised me, Xia Shangzhou. Isn't it normal for her to praise you?" Lu Binlai yawned. "What did she praise you about?" "She praised me." Lin Jie intentionally paused for a moment before continuing. "She said that I'm a good person. She said that I come from a good family, and even though I look like a pampered person, I'm actually very capable and hardworking. I'm much more serious than most people who come from ordinary families. She also said that I'm not an embroidered pillow, that I'm capable, respectful, polite, and good at taking care of others." On the other end of the phone, Xia Shangzhou and Lu Binlai fought back their drowsiness and waited for Lin Jie to finish speaking before they spoke up one after another. "Xia Shangzhou, so, boss, can you tell me the good news now?" Lu Binlai cooperatively replied with two yes, but halfway through, his yawn drowned out his voice. Lin Jie waited until Lu Binlai's yawn subsided before replying, "I'm done speaking." A few seconds of silence later, Xia Shangzhou and Lu Binlai's whispers could be heard. "Lu Binlai, did I miss out on something?" "Xia Shangzhou, I wanted to ask you the same question too. What is the good news that boss is talking about? Is it a trip to Golden Resplendence, or a meal at Beijing World Hotel? Why didn't I hear those two words?" "Lu Binlai, who am I supposed to ask?" "Xia Shangzhou, what did you hear earlier? Don't you have ears?" "Lu Binlai, didn't you hear it too?" Faced with the quarrel between the two of them, Lin Jie cleared his throat. The other end of the phone instantly fell silent. 3 seconds later, Xia Shangzhou asked weakly, "Boss, what's your good news?" "Lu Binlai, old Xia kept squeezing me earlier, so I didn't hear him clearly." "Xia Shangzhou, when did I squeeze you?" Lin Jie knew that the two of them were going to get into an argument soon, so before Lu Binlai could speak up, he had already interjected leisurely, "I said that Yao Yao praised me. She said that I'm a good person. She said that I come from a good family, and even though I look like a pampered person, I'm actually a very capable and hardworking person. I'm much more serious than most people who come from ordinary families. She also said that I'm not an embroidered pillow, that I'm capable and cultured, and that I'm respectful, polite, and good at taking care of others." After Lin Jie repeated his words without missing a single word, Xia Shangzhou waited for a very long time. Seeing that Lin Jie wasn't speaking anymore, he asked doubtfully, "That's all?" "Lin Jie, that's all." "Lu Binlai, that's all?" Chapter 647. The other end of the call fell silent once more. 3 seconds later, Xia Shangzhou, "How the heck is this a good thing? This is clearly dog abuse." "Lu Binlai, damn it. You made me jump out of my bed in agitation. How disappointing. How disappointing." Using his voice, Lin Jie coughed lightly. The tone of the duo on the other end of the call changed in an instant. "Xia Shangzhou, boss, this is really a good thing. Ha ha ha, I'm so happy." "Lu Binlai, boss, do you know how much I love dog food? Please feed it to your heart's content." Satisfied, Lin Jie hung up the call. He took a look at the time and noted that it was already very late. He had replied to Softbun's WeChat, but she didn't reply to him either. Lin Jie guessed that she was probably asleep, but he still couldn't help but feel a little worried due to her illness. Thus, he returned to her room, took out her room card, and swiped it open. The lights in her room were switched on, and the curtains weren't drawn either. She was curled up on the bed with her phone in her hand. Just as he had guessed, she had fallen into a deep sleep. Lin Jie first switched off the lights in the room, leaving only the 2 bedside lamps on, after which he drew the curtains before making his way over to the bed. He picked up the blanket that she had kicked onto the floor and carefully covered her with it, after which he took her phone from her hand and placed it on the bedside table. Her sleeping face looked peaceful and beautiful. Lin Jie could tell that she was feeling unwell, but he didn't rush to leave. Instead, he gently sat down on the edge of the bed and gazed at her quietly. It was late at night, and he was the only one in the room. As he gazed at her, he couldn't help but reveal the depths of his love for her in his eyes. He slowly reached out and gently touched her cheek. His actions were gentle and caring. You said that you have someone you want to like. He lowered his eyelids slightly, concealing the darkness in his eyes. I was really quite sad, but later on, I thought about it, and it's actually okay. I'm not your first love. At this point, Lin Jiej's eyelids twitched upward as a hint of a smile appeared on his lips. But you are my first love. After saying those words, Lin Jiej's fingertips lightly brushed against Shi Yao's cheeks. He stared at her for a moment longer before finally retracting his hand. It was really getting late. He got up to leave, but before he could move, his attention was attracted by a book on the bedside table. Was that a notebook or a diary? If it was the diary, it wouldn't be good for him to touch it without her permission, right? However, if it was really a diary, would there be a record of the person she wanted to love? Lin Jiej struggled internally for a very long time, but in the end, he still subconsciously reached out and took the book. There was a pin inside, and he opened it casually. It was the page where the pin was. Under the dim light of the bedside table, he saw a few lines of words. September 30th, 2018. Airfare, 2,680 yuan. October 1st, 2018. Hotel fare, 2,800 yuan per night for a total of 7 nights. October 1st, 2018. Drip fare, 1,500 yuan. Chapter 648. She didn't ask him about the hotel fee, so she must have looked it up on the internet after finding out the hotel's name. As for the airfare and drip fees, she did ask him about it, but he didn't think too much of it. Other than that, there seemed to be something else. Lin Jiej seemed to have guessed something, and he quickly flipped to the first page of the account book in his hand. What he saw was one record after another. He continued flipping, and on a certain page, there was a piece of paper pasted on it. The paper was folded, and after he unfolded it, he realized that it was the name of a certain clothing brand with a price tag attached to it. Initially, he didn't realize what kind of account it was, but when he saw the date, he suddenly remembered that this was the first semester. On the day she attended her French class, he tagged along and said that her clothes were ugly. She replied fiercely, "Even rats come to my house in tears. Since you think my clothes are ugly, why don't you buy me some clothes then?" Then, he really bought her a box of clothes. And this piece of paper was the price of those clothes. It wasn't just the money that he had spent on her. She had even recorded the allowance that her grandfather, her parents, and Lin Jie had given her in detail, from the present to 6 years ago. When Lin Jiej flipped through the account book page by page, he realized that his hands were trembling and his heart was flustered. She had recorded every single person in his family, every single cent they had given her, and every single cent they had spent on her. Why was that so? Even if he didn't ask, the answer should be obvious. She was hoping that one day, when she became capable enough to earn money, she would return all of it to him. Lin Jiej stared at the account book in his hand, as if a statue. It took him a very long time before he finally recovered from his daze. He turned around to look at the sleeping young lady, and a complicated look appeared in his eyes. Why did she want to return all of that money? Was it because she didn't want to get too deeply involved with his family from the very start? Was it because she wanted to sever all ties with them one day? Lin Jiej felt as if something was squeezing his heart viciously, causing a piercing pain and a bone-piercing chill. He did not dare to look at her for too long and quickly withdrew his gaze. He frantically flipped to the last page of the account book and put the pin back. Then, he closed the account book and put it back on the bedside table. He stood up in a panic, not daring to stay in her room for a second longer. He took slightly disorderly steps and left. He returned to his room and didn't turn on the lights. In the darkness, he stared at a certain spot in the air for a long time before he lifted his feet and dragged his suddenly heavy steps to the side of his bed and lay down on it. His mind was blank as he stared at the ceiling for a long time before he blinked his eyelids lightly. Just now, when he saw her WeChat messages, he was so happy. He thought he still had hope, but now, he realized he had been too optimistic. In her heart, from the past until now, she had never thought of him as— no, to be exact, she had never thought of him as her fiancé. Chapter 649. He had been overjoyed by her compliment, thinking that he had finally found hope after all the hard work he had put in and waited for so long. But that account book was like a bucket of cold water that was poured over him, forcing him to face reality. What did it mean that she was able to calculate her debts so clearly? This meant that deep down in her heart, she had changed her opinion of him. From the beginning to the end, she had never had the thought of being with him. To her, he was just a friend. Lin Jiej had no idea how long he had been lying on the bed like a fool. All he knew was that when he finally came back to his senses, he realized that his heart was aching terribly. The pain was so excruciating that it pierced right into his bones. It was even more painful than when he confessed to her and was rejected by her back then. Indeed, how could it not hurt? He was thinking about her and her future, but she was thinking about the end of their relationship. Lin Jiej felt as if something was gripping his throat, choking him so much that he found it hard to breathe. He slowly raised his hand and placed it on his chest. He could feel his heart pounding, and with each beat, he could feel a deep pain racking his heart. As she had slept late the previous day, it was already noon when Shi Yao woke up the next day. Starving, she leaped out of bed and went to wash up before changing her clothes. After which, she ran to the opposite door and knocked on it. Perhaps it was because Lin Jiej hadn't woken up yet, but after Shi Yao pressed the doorbell 3 to 4 times, she finally heard faint footsteps behind the door. The door opened, and before she could even see who it was, she spoke up, "Lin Jiej." At this point, she suddenly paused. Then, she stared at the person who opened the door for a long while before she blurted out in a daze, "Si sis Jai, is it you?" As she spoke, Shi Yao stretched her head into the room and asked, "Where's Lin Jiej? Is he still asleep?" Lin Jiai, who had been woken up by Lin Jiej in the middle of the night, yawned as she adjusted her pajamas. She stepped aside and gestured for Shi Yao to enter the room as she replied, "Is it an ATM? He called me in the middle of the night and said that he had an emergency and had to go to Shanghai. Then he said that he brought you to Chengdu to play, but he couldn't accompany you. He was worried about leaving you here alone. So he asked me to come over and play with you." As Lin Jai spoke, she walked into the bathroom and picked up her toothbrush. After squeezing some toothpaste on her toothbrush, she asked, "Darling Yao Yao, the ATM told me that you fell sick last night. How are you now? Are you feeling better?" Shi Yao nodded and replied, "I'm fine now." Lin Jai, who was still brushing her teeth, didn't say a word. Instead, she gestured to the room, gesturing for Luo Ruoxin to find a place to wait for her. After brushing her teeth, Lin Jai washed her face as she said, "Yao Yao, let's have some skewers for lunch. The ATM will pay the bill. Don't worry, you can have as much fun as you want for the next few days. Before I came here, I've already had the ATM take care of all of our daily necessities. Your big sister knows how to have fun, so just follow me obediently and watch how I bring you around Chengdu." Shi Yao had sent Lin Jiej a message asking if he had arrived in Shanghai. Perhaps he was busy, but he didn't reply. According to Lin Jiej's original schedule, Shi Yao and Lin Jai would stay in Chengdu until the end of the National Day holiday before returning to Beijing. Shi Yao had classes the next day, so she had intended to head straight back to school. However, she had bought some souvenirs for her parents from Chengdu, so she hesitated for a moment before deciding to return home. Chapter 650. Many a time, there were many coincidences. Shi Yao didn't think that her moment of hesitation would lead to her stumbling upon a huge secret. Lin Jai had a dinner party at night, and Shi Yao had to return home. As it was already 4 in the afternoon when she arrived at the Capital International Airport, Lin Jai had Xia Shangzhou pick her up and accompany her to meet the client. Meanwhile, the Lin family's chauffeur was responsible for sending Shi Yao back. The airport was located in the suburbs, so it wasn't too far away from Shi Yao's house. On top of that, there wasn't any traffic either. In just 20 minutes, the Lin family's chauffeur had already sent Shi Yao to her house. The chauffeur had intended to send Shi Yao's belongings upstairs, but due to the elevator, Shi Yao didn't bother the chauffeur. After thanking him, they parted ways at the bottom of the building. Shi Yao dragged her suitcase all the way up to her house. She knocked on the door, but no one answered. Thinking that her parents weren't home, she took out her keys and opened the door herself. Pushing the door open, She was just about to drag her suitcase into the house when she heard her father's voice coming from the half-closed door of the master bedroom. "There's someone at home? Why isn't the door open for me?" Shiryao was just about to call out "Daddy" when she heard her mother's tearful voice coming from inside the house. "Do you think that I want to live with you? I've wanted to leave you for a very long time. Let me tell you, if the Lin family hadn't suddenly come knocking on my door 6 years ago, I would have already left with Yao Yao back then. I've wanted to leave you for a very long time." "Leaving with Yao Yao? What do you mean by that?" Yao's words died in her throat. Clutching her suitcase tightly, she stood at the door, unmoving. "You can leave. You can leave right now too. But Yao Yao, you have to stay." Compared to her mother's tearful voice, her father's voice was much more ferocious. "Why should I? I gave birth to Yao Yao. After she was born, did you care about her? When you wanted to divorce me, you also said that you didn't want Yao Yao. Wasn't it because the Lin family came to your door and said that there was a child betrothal? You saw that Yao Yao was going to marry into a rich family, so you knelt down and begged me not to divorce you. To put it bluntly, you only agreed to keep Yao Yao because she was useful to you. Don't think that I don't know that at that time, you owed someone money, and the Lin family sent you a betrothal gift of 1.01 million yuan. You couldn't wait to get that money, so you came to me. Tell me, all these years, have you ever thought of living a good life with me? These years we have been pretending to be loving in front of Yao Yao. You pretend to be a loving father, but in reality, is that so? Let me tell you, if you really can't stand it, then leave. The door is right there. Go, go. I definitely won't keep you. You have to leave my daughter behind. She's still my daughter. Why should I keep her for you? At the end of the day, aren't you just unwilling to let go of your daughter because she's valuable? You said that I begged you for 1 million yuan back then, but didn't I still give you 500,000 yuan in the end? We split it 50-50, so what right do you have to criticize me? Besides, this child betrothal was decided by my father and Uncle Lin back then. My father was the one who saved Uncle Lin's life, not your father. Without my father, do you think Yao Yao would have such a good life? I'm the one who gave birth to your daughter. Without me, do you think you could have given birth to Yao Yao alone? Chapter 651. Shiryao stood at the door and stared in the direction of the master bedroom, her fingers tightly gripping the handle of her luggage. She didn't hear what her parents were arguing about, but she knew that they seemed to have gotten into a fight, and something seemed to have fallen to the ground, producing a sharp, shattering sound. Shiryao silently pursed her lips, and as if she had never returned home, she gently closed the door, pulled her luggage, and entered the elevator. After leaving the neighborhood, Shiryao randomly chose a direction and began walking aimlessly with her suitcase in tow. She had no idea how long she had been walking, and she had no idea where she was going either. It was only when she was so exhausted that she could no longer move that she finally stopped. By this time, the sky had already darkened, and the streetlights by the side of the street lit up one after another. Shiryao stood by the side of the road, looking at the cars passing by, and she suddenly felt a little lost. She felt as if everything that she had just heard was just a nightmare. But no matter how much she tried to avoid it or how much she didn't want to face it, she couldn't help but realize that the harmonious family and doting atmosphere that she had always thought of was just an illusion. What was she to them? A tool that would allow her to soar to the top? If not for the betrothal ceremony that her grandfather had arranged for her, wouldn't she have already lost her father 6 years ago? Wouldn't she have lost her so-called family? She had always thought that her engagement with Lin Jiej was a result of her grandfather's generation being sentimental and righteous. But today, her parents' argument made her realize that things weren't as simple as she had thought. The Lin family really did treat her well. Be it Grandpa Lin, Lin Jiej's parents, Lin Jiej-san and uncle, Sis Jiai, or even the Lin family servants and chauffeur, they treated her so well that she felt that they treated her even better than her own parents. It was precisely because they treated her so well that she couldn't accept the kindness that they had given her with a clear conscience. She had to remember that she had to return it to them. But what about her parents? They actually took away 1 million yuan from the Lin family without any qualms. She did have an engagement with Lin Jiej, but that was just an engagement. She wasn't married to Lin Jiej, so the money didn't belong to her. Even if she was married to Lin Jiej, She shouldn't have spent the Lin family's money like that. Yao couldn't tell whether she was mentally exhausted or physically exhausted. She slowly squatted down and buried her head in her knees. To be honest, she could not accept the truth. The scene that she had accidentally stumbled into in the afternoon had not only overturned her understanding of the family, it had also made her feel as if there was a rock pressing down on her heart. Thinking about the Lin family made her feel heavy. What made her even more upset was that her parents really loved her. Or did they ever have a daughter in their hearts? What was she to them? Money tree? Welfare lottery? Yao squatted on the road for a long time before she finally got up and dragged her suitcase to the nearest subway station to return to school. Lung Nuan, Jiang Yu, and He Tian were all in the dormitory, and upon seeing her return, they immediately pestered her for gossip. Jiang Yu said, Yao, tell me, what did you and Senior Lin do in Chengdu? He Tian, Yao, how far are you with Senior Lin? Lung Nuan, Yao, will we be able to eat wedding candy soon? From start to end, Yao didn't say a word. She found a random spot to place her luggage before grabbing her towel and pajamas. After saying, I'm going to take a bath, she walked into the bathroom. Chapter 652. Lung Nuan was the coldest person in the dormitory, but she was also the most meticulous. Even though Yao had only said 4 words when she returned, Lung Nuan could still tell that Yao was in a bad mood. So, after the sound of running water could be heard from the bathroom, Lung Nuan turned to Jiang Yu and He Tian, who were excitedly discussing how they should force Yao to tell the truth about her and Lin Jiege, and said, Yao isn't in a good mood. Jiang Yu and He Tian turned to look at Lung Nuan in astonishment. Nuan, how did you know? Why is Yao in a bad mood? Could she have quarreled with Senior Lin? Lung Nuan shook her head. I'm not too sure, but it's true that Yao isn't in a good mood. You two shouldn't disturb her too much later. Since Lung Nuan had reminded Yao to come out again, He Tian and Jiang Yu didn't pursue the matter. However, even though the two of them were a little more careless than Lung Nuan, they were still girls. After being reminded, they took a closer look at Yao, and they could tell that she was in a bad mood. While He Tian and Jiang Yu didn't pursue the matter, they still took out some delicious food and asked if Yao wanted some in an attempt to cheer her up. It was rare for Yao to be in a bad mood. Even in the past, if there was something that made her angry, she would usually toss it to the back of her mind as long as there was food in front of her. But this time, He Tian and Jiang Yu had taken out all of their stash of delicious food, and from start to end, Yao's expression didn't change much at all. In the end, she only said in a soft voice to He Tian and Jiang Yu, I'm not hungry, before climbing back onto her bed. No one spoke in the dormitory anymore. He Tian would occasionally glance at Yao's bed, pretending to take something out of it. Yao was lying on her bed with her eyes closed, not moving at all. He Tian sneaked a peek at Yao 4 to 5 times, and seeing that she was still in this state, she thought that she had fallen asleep. So, she turned to Lung Nuan and Jiang Yu and whispered, it seems like it's nothing much. Yao is already asleep. Hearing those words, Lung Nuan and Jiang Yu heaved a sigh of relief. It was already getting late, and the 3 of them still had lessons at 8 tomorrow morning. Thinking that Yao was fine, the 3 of them headed to their beds to sleep. Before 12 o'clock, everyone in the dormitory was asleep. On the other hand, Yao, who had been lying motionless on the bed for a very long time, slowly opened her eyes. She knew that her emotions had affected Lung Nuan and the others, and she also knew that they were worried about her. She wanted to act as though nothing had happened and interact with them happily, but she really couldn't bring herself to do that today. She gently turned over and looked at the wall quietly for a while. Then, tears flowed uncontrollably from the corner of her eyes. She knew that crying wouldn't solve the problem, but she was really sad. Ever since she accidentally overheard her parents arguing at home in the afternoon, she had been holding it in until late at night. In the end, she could not hold it in any longer. She thought she would be fine after crying for a while, but the more she cried, the more tears flowed. She was afraid that her sobs would wake up her roommates, so she could only bite the blanket with all her might. When she woke up the next day, Yao was no different from usual. Chapter 653. Since Shi Yao didn't say anything, the others didn't ask either. Just like that, 2 to 3 days passed peacefully. Seeing that Shi Yao was getting better day by day, Lung Nuan and the others thought that her grief was already over. But on Wednesday night, before everyone was about to sleep, Shi Yao suddenly said, "Nuan Nuan, didn't you work as a laborer before? Do you know what kind of part-time job is suitable without affecting your studies?" Before Lung Nuan could say anything, He Tian had already asked curiously, "Yao Yao, why are you suddenly asking about this? Are you thinking of a part-time job?" Shi Yao replied with an "und" before turning her gaze back to Lung Nuan. "Jiang Yu, it can't be, right? Yao Yao, why are you suddenly thinking of a part-time job? Are you short of money at the moment?" Shi Yao replied with an "un" once more. This time, she didn't avert her gaze away from Lung Nuan like He Tian did earlier. "Yao Yao, you can tell me if you need money. My father just transferred me a lot of money, and I haven't counted it yet. How much do you need? I can transfer it to you right now." He Tian's family was the wealthiest in their dormitory. Even though she couldn't be considered a tycoon, she was still slightly better off than most families. As she spoke, He Tian really took out her phone and logged into her mobile banking account. Ignoring He Tian's words, Shi Yao went straight to Lung Nuan. 10, 10, 10. He Tian counted as she ran over to Shi Yao's bed. Tilting her head upward, she asked, "I have around 10,000 in this card, 8,000 in another card, and 4,000 in another card. Yao Yao, how much do you need?" As He Tian was blocking Shi Yao's view of Lung Nuan, Shi Yao could only meet He Tian's gaze and reply earnestly, "I need more than 1,000,000. He Tian thought that Shi Yao was joking. "Yao Yao, you can't joke like that. You scared me to death. 1,000,000. I doubt I'll be able to get that much money even if I sell myself." Just like He Tian, Jiang Yu also thought that Shi Yao was joking. "Yao Yao, wait for me to buy the lottery tomorrow. If I win 50 million renminbi, don't even mention 1 million. I'll give you 10 million renminbi." She wasn't joking, she was serious, however. Shi Yao only muttered those words in her heart. She treated it as a joke and said, "So, none of you can afford the money I want, so I can only earn it myself." As she spoke, she craned her neck to look at Lung Nuan. "Nuan Nuan." Lung Nuan raised her phone and tapped on the screen for a moment before replying to Shi Yao's urging, "I've already asked around for you. Since you have to attend classes, there aren't many part-time jobs available to you. I've already sent them to your WeChat, so take a look at them yourself. Thank you. Thank you." Shi Yao thanked Lung Nuan before grabbing her phone and tapping into the document that Lung Nuan had just sent her. She entered the document and studied it for a moment before deciding on 2 options that she could consider for a part-time job. After which, she turned on her computer and filled out the basic information required for a part-time job into a form before sending it over. Closing the computer, it was almost time to sleep. After lying down, Shi Yao raised her phone and set the alarm, and it was then that she saw a notification on her WeChat. Chapter 654. Sis Jai doted on her dearly, so it was likely that she had carefully selected the bridal gowns that she had sent over. Every single one of them was unbelievably beautiful, and there were even a few of them that were so exquisite and dreamy that they seemed like they would only appear in the dreams of little girls. Shi Yao looked through all of the photos, but she didn't choose any of them. Instead, she exited WeChat and tapped on her messages. She searched for Lin Jiej's name and stared at the message that she had sent him in Chengdu for a very long time. After a long while, she raised her hand and typed a line of words on the screen. "Sis Jai and the others have already started preparing for the wedding. We have to find a way to lay our cards on the table with them as soon as possible. Otherwise, when everything is already prepared, we'll appear to be too immature." After saying all that she needed to say, Shi Yao looked through the message she had typed from start to finish, and after confirming that there were no problems, she tapped on the send button. In her fingertips, about to touch the screen on the split second, she suddenly paused. For some reason, she suddenly recalled the time when she had bumped into him in SBK's elevator earlier this year. The night she returned home, she tossed and turned in bed, unable to fall asleep. In the end, she made up her mind and sent him a message to cancel their engagement. Just like today, it was already very late that night. Back then, the two of them were still strangers who had nothing to do with each other. In her eyes, he was still so far away, and she thought that they would never be able to cross paths. But in the blink of an eye, in just half a year, so many things had happened between the two of them. Due to the long period of disuse, the phone screen automatically turned black. The sudden change in brightness snapped Shiryao out of her daze. She unlocked the screen and tapped on the send button. She didn't wait for his reply before putting the phone down. She laid on the bed, closed her eyes, and prepared to sleep. However, after lying there quietly for a long time, not only did she not feel sleepy, but she also felt a faint pain in her chest. That day in Chengdu, after Lin Jiej invited Lin Jiai to Chengdu with money, he really flew to Shanghai. In truth, the project in Shanghai wasn't that urgent, but he still stayed there for nearly half a month. It was only when he was done with everything that he had to do that he returned to Beijing. His flight was at night. When he arrived at the capital airport, it was already close to 12 o'clock. The chauffeur came to pick him up, and as soon as he got into the car, the chauffeur asked him where he was heading to. He was just about to reply that he was heading to G University, and he was even thinking that he could look for Softbun to have breakfast together tomorrow morning. However, just as the words were about to leave his mouth, the phone in his pocket suddenly vibrated. He took it out and saw that it was a message from Shiryao. After reading the text message, the depressed mood that he had been in Shanghai for so long and had finally digested the fact that she had the account book in her hands resurfaced in his mind. He gripped his phone and stared at the screen for a while. It wasn't until the screen locked automatically and the light dimmed that he raised his head and replied to the driver, "Let's go home." Over the next few days, Shiryao didn't receive any response from Lin Jiej. She had thought of making some time to give Lin Jiej a call, but she had been busy with her part-time job recently, and she had been busy for the past few days. As a result, she ended up delaying the call until a week later. Putting aside Lin Jiej, even the sexy and frisky chat group that Shiryao frequented every day was only kicked out by Juice a week later. Chapter 655. It was a Thursday, and around 6 in the evening, Juice contacted Shiryao and, "Sexy and frisky, Sis Yao, what have you been up to recently? Where have you been? Do you want to play some games tonight?" Shiryao was in the midst of rushing out of the house when she heard her phone ring. She took a look at it and casually replied, "I'm working, so I don't have much time to play games." After sending that message, Shiryao put down her phone and returned to her work. She didn't leave the WeChat group, so messages continued to pop up one after another. "Expert of the monkeys. Working? What kind of work?" "Juice. That's right, Sis Yao. Why did you suddenly run off to work out of nowhere?" "Tide. Sis Yao. Maybe you're trying to raise a beauty." "Juice. Yeah. I'm raising a beauty +1. Expert of the monkeys. Raising a beauty +1 days of overtime." Juice. Sent a sinister smirk emoji. Tide. Sent 2 sinister smirks emoji. Expert of the monkeys. Sent a string of sinister smirks emoji. After getting dressed, Shiryao, who was in a hurry to head out for work, took a look at the unread messages in the sexy and frisky group. Other than Mr. Numbers, everyone else had popped up. Even Tide, who usually disappeared after popping up unexpectedly, popped up several times this time. Judging from the content of their conversation, after Tide, who would often flaunt their love and flaunt their affection in the group, mentioned that she was raising a beauty, the atmosphere in the group changed, and it became a hint of schadenfreude. But the question was, what was the point of their schadenfreude? Shiryao had no idea what they were getting so worked up about, and because she was in a hurry to catch the bus, she didn't appear in the group. Instead, she grabbed her bag and left the dormitory room in a hurry. As it was already year 4, there weren't many classes in the academy. Most of the students were busy with their internships and postgraduate exams. For example, in room 501, Song Chaoshi, his girlfriend Yi Zhenjin, and Xia Shangzhou had gone off for their internship. On the other hand, Liu Binlai spent his days studying diligently in preparation for his master's degree. As for Lin Jiej, the matter of him being recommended for his postgraduate studies had already been decided back in his 3rd year, so there shouldn't be any mishaps. Thus, compared to the others in room 501, he had more than enough time on his hands. Thus, he quickly got to work on the company registration that he had planned beforehand. There were many things that did not seem complicated at the time of planning, But when it came to actually doing things, there were many trivial things. In the past few days after returning to Beijing, he had to choose an office building and go to the Bureau of Industry and Commerce. He was really busy every day. On the afternoon of Thursday, Lin Jiege invited the bank president to have afternoon tea together. Just like him, the bank president was relatively young, and it had only been a few years since he graduated from university. Thus, the two of them had a common topic to talk about, and by the time they finished their afternoon tea, it was already 5 in the evening. After parting ways with the president, Lin Jiege returned to his car and recalled that he had promised Liang Jusi a few days ago that he would have dinner with her tonight. He took out his phone and tapped into WeChat. Just as he was about to ask Liang Jusi where they were going for dinner, he saw an unread message in the Sexy and Frisky group. Chapter 656. It was Liu Binlai who contacted her first to ask her if she wanted to play games at night, but her reply left him bewildered. I have to work recently, so I don't have much time to play games. Work? Why would she be working all of a sudden? Did she eat up the allowance her parents gave her? How long has it been since we last met, and she's already in such dire straits? With this thought in mind, Lin Jiege quickly scanned through the chat logs. When he saw the despicable emojis sent by those guys from 501 around, Sixiao wants to raise a beauty, he couldn't help but sneer coldly in his heart. Softbun might still be in the dark about who they are, but don't think that I don't know that they're mocking me. Are they using the word beauty to describe me? Very well, I'll remember it. Even after Lin Jiege finished reading through the messages, Shuyao didn't appear again. Did she disappear right after leaving those words behind? Lin Jiege struggled internally for a moment, but in the end, he still tapped on Shuyao's WeChat and entered the private chat page. On the way to work, Shuyao received a WeChat message from Mr. Numbers. It had been quite some time since they last contacted each other, so why would Mr. Numbers suddenly send her a private message? Shuyao was taken aback for a moment before tapping into the chat page. Less than 111,111. You mentioned in the group that you're working recently? So, it's because of that. Shuyao typed, less than 111,111. Why? This doesn't seem to have anything to do with Mr. Numbers. Why would he ask me why? Perhaps it was because Shuyao was in a daze that she didn't reply to Mr. Numbers' message, but he sent another message. Less than 111,111. Why did you suddenly think of working? Is it because you don't have enough living expenses? Shuyao had a nagging feeling that Mr. Numbers was questioning her, but on second thought, she realized that he didn't know her at all, so there was no reason for him to question her. Perhaps, after playing together for so long, he was just asking out of curiosity. With this thought in mind, Shuyao typed, that's not it. I just want to work. Besides, isn't it normal for university students to work part-time? Her reply was flawless, and for a moment, Lin Jiege thought that he might have been overly nervous. But his keen intuition told him that the reason she was working for him was not as simple as she said. Lin Jiege pondered for a few seconds before replying, it can't be that you owe them a huge sum of money? On the bus, upon seeing Mr. Numbers' message, Shuyao's hands trembled, and she nearly threw her phone away. Seriously? Does Mr. Numbers belong to God? You can even guess that? Shuyao was stunned by 111,111's conjecture. She didn't realize that her reply had betrayed her. How did you know? It was only after the message was successfully sent that Shuyao realized that she had admitted to it. She immediately tried to take back her message, but it was too late. Mr. Numbers had already seen her message and replied, it was a wild guess. Gosh, how could he be so accurate when he was blindly guessing? While Shuyao grumbled in her heart, a new notification popped up on her screen. 111,111. Who do you owe money to? Lin Jiege waited for a long time, but he didn't receive Shuyao's reply. Sitting in the car, he could vaguely feel his palms sweating. Chapter 657. Sometimes, when a person was too afraid of something, they would instinctively choose to run away from it. This was an instinctive act of self-preservation. However, Lin Jiege knew that while he could run away for a moment, he couldn't run away forever. Ever since he was young, he had always been a very courageous person. This was because he knew that there were some things that would come. No matter how much he tried to avoid it, he would never be able to change the outcome. Since he couldn't change it, he might as well face it head-on. But when it came to the word Shiryao, he felt fear, and panic. He knew that all these emotions could be summed up in one word. He was afraid of losing her. Sitting in the car, Lin Jiej fell into deep thought for a very long time. Eventually, he decided to send a new message to Shiryao. Who did you owe money to? Before Shiryao could think of a way to reply to Mr. Numbers' question, Mr. Numbers had already thrown another one at her. Less than 111,111. It can't be your fiancé, right? Did he have to hit the nail on the head like that? Shiryao suddenly began to suspect that Mr. Numbers was a parasite in her stomach. He was able to guess everything so accurately. Perhaps it was due to her silence. Mr. Numbers sent another message half a minute later. This time, it wasn't a question but a confirmation. Less than 111,111. I guessed correctly. Even though it was only 4 words, Shiryao could feel Mr. Numbers' certainty through the screen. She wasn't good at lying in the first place, and Mr. Numbers had already put it this way. Considering that he didn't know her anyway, she replied with an. He had guessed it right. She had to return his and the Lin family's money, and that was why she was working there. Deep in her heart, she had never thought of marrying him. Back then, when her grandfather found out that they had been living together for a month, he used this as an excuse to force the two families into a marriage. If it wasn't for his act that day, she would have already broken off the engagement in front of the two families. She remembered every debt so clearly, and in her heart, it was likely that the moment when they were no longer related to each other would be the moment when she had to repay her debt. Some time ago, she had sent him a message late at night asking about their marriage, and now, she had gone to work. She must have been planning to sever all ties with him, right? He had already guessed this outcome before asking her, but now that the truth was laid out before his eyes, he still found it hard to accept. Sever? How could he? She could clear her name, but he couldn't. From the very beginning, he let her enter his eyes, his heart, and his world bit by bit. He never thought about clearing his name with her. After he recognized his own heart and realized that he liked her, every day, he thought about the days after they were together. He had never thought of breaking up, but she had never thought of being with him. Lin Jiej didn't reply to Shiryao's WeChat. Instead, he sat in the car for a very long time until Liang Juxi's call came in. Only then did his eyes twitch a little. Liang Juxi picked up the call and said, "Brother Jia, let's go to the clubhouse tonight. It's been a long time since I went there." Lin Jiej didn't hear what Liang Juxi said at all. He first replied with an and a moment later, he asked, "What did you just say?" Liang Juxi repeated his words once more. Chapter 658. Mr. Numbers was clearly pressing her on the matter earlier, so why did he suddenly ignore her after she admitted to it? She couldn't help but feel that something was amiss. Just as she was wondering if she should send Mr. Numbers another message, the bus arrived at the station. Thus, she could only retract her thoughts, grab her things, and get off the bus to focus on her work. Lin Jiej and Liang Juxi had agreed to meet at the clubhouse at 6. However, by the time Lin Jiej arrived at the clubhouse, it was already 7:20, almost an hour later than the agreed time. Liang Juxi was a typical hedonistic son of a wealthy family. He had always believed that enjoyment came first, and everything else was secondary. When Lin Jiej pushed open the door and walked in, he saw Liang Juxi leisurely leaning against a large sofa. Behind him, a technician was massaging his back, and by the marble table in front of him, there was a young and beautiful lady kneeling on the floor, feeding him yogurt and fruits. Lin Jiej had long since gotten used to Liang Juxi's profligate and flirtatious side. Seeing how Liang Juxi was behaving like a boss, he calmly walked over to a sofa a distance away from Liang Juxi and the two young ladies and sat down. "Brother Jia, you're finally here. If you took any longer, I would have gone moldy," Liang Juxi said as he glanced at the yogurt on the table. The waitress tactfully passed the yogurt over to Liang Juxi, but Liang Juxi didn't reach out to take it. Instead, he opened his mouth, bit on the straw, and took 2 sips before turning to Lin Jiej and saying, "Brother Jia, I have to say, I used to feel a little sick of coming here every day, but it's been a long time since I last came here. Now that I'm back, I'm quite satisfied with this place. Brother Jia, I've specially reserved 2 beautiful ladies for you. Why don't you join me for a massage, drink some wine, and eat some meat? Lin Jiej glanced at the yogurt and fruits on the table and shot Liang Juicy a look as if he was looking at an idiot. Brother Jia, you don't understand, do you? If you have wine in your heart, yogurt is wine. If you have meat in your heart, even popcorn is meat. Lunatic. How in the world did he manage to grow up with such a person? This time, Lin Jiej couldn't even be bothered to look at Liang Juicy as if he was looking at an idiot. Liang Juicy didn't mind Lin Jiej's disdainful look, or rather, he was already used to it. Brother Jia, it's not that I want to criticize you, but your background is slightly better than mine, right? You're also slightly more handsome than me, right? Your studies are also slightly better than mine, right? But so what? You're far from me. This idiot must have gotten it wrong by a little bit. He must have misunderstood something, right? Putting aside his family background, how could he compare to him in terms of handsomeness? As for her studies, she had failed all her exams since she was a child, copied his homework, and attended a private school that her family had bought for her. Was she really only slightly worse than him? Lin Jiej rolled his eyes. He couldn't be bothered to expose Liang Juicy. Chapter 659. Did this fellow have some kind of misunderstanding on what it meant to have a taste for women? Unable to take it any longer, Lin Jiej finally spoke up. Yes, you do have a taste for women, but it's a pity that you're still an old virgin. Upon hearing those words, Liang Juicy, who had been enjoying the service calmly, immediately stood up and pointed at the technician and waitress. Get lost. I don't want you anymore. After chasing the 2 of them away, Liang Juicy stomped his feet furiously as he complained to Lin Jiej, who was sitting calmly on the sofa. Brother Jia, you're going too far. Don't you know that one shouldn't expose one's shortcomings? Let me tell you, even though my body is that of an old virgin, my mind and thoughts aren't. In my dreams and erotic mangas, I've seen countless women, and I've seen countless women every single day. Why yes? Lin Jiej wanted to drink a glass of water, but he couldn't help but flip through the items on the table. Wang Zai, QQ milk, yogurt, waha. Is there something wrong with Liang Juicy? Giving up, Lin Jiej leaned back onto the sofa and said to Liang Juicy, I've seen countless women with my will, so who doesn't know how to speak the same words? I even used my will to earn 1 billion renminbi just now. To put it bluntly, I'm just daydreaming. Liang Juicy wasn't just stomping his feet anymore. He even jumped onto the sofa and shouted, Brother Jia, why you? Lin Jiej shot a glance at Liang Juicy. Oh, there's one more thing that I forgot to say. Even though you've seen countless women, you're still an old virgin. It's easy for you to refute my words, but so what? You're speaking as if you're not an old virgin. That's right. Liang Juicy's eyes lit up. In the next instant, he glared at Lin Jiej arrogantly and retorted, What's wrong with me being an old virgin? You're speaking as if you're not an old virgin. I am, but I have a fiancé. Lin Jiej lazily changed his posture. I'm chaste for my fiancé, but you don't have a fiancé. That's why I'm different from you. Even if I'm an old virgin, I'm still an old virgin with a fiancé. You're an old virgin. Liang Juicy froze on the spot as if he had been struck in the head. After a while, he frantically jumped from the sofa to the ground, and from the ground to the sofa again. Brother Jia, you tricked me. Why you? You did it on purpose. You just want to provoke me. I. Liang Juicy suddenly realized that Lin Jiej, who had been speaking viciously to him a moment ago, was staring intently at a certain spot in a daze. What was going on? Why did he suddenly become unhappy? Liang Juicy immediately fell silent. He walked up to Lin Jiej and asked, Brother Jia? Brother Jia? What happened to you? Lin Jiej snapped out of his daze and shot a glance at Liang Juicy. He quickly reined in his gloomy state of mind from the mention of his fiancée and replied calmly, It's nothing much. Let's eat. After which, he stood up and walked over to a nearby table before taking a seat. Liang Jusi followed behind him. He pulled out a chair and sat down before pressing the service bell to summon a waiter. The dishes were ordered by Liang Jusi, and after the waiter left, Liang Jusi discreetly assessed Lin Jie from head to toe. It seemed like the latter was fine, and the dazed look he had felt earlier was just a figment of his imagination. The suite that Liang Jusi and Lin Jie were seated in was located on the second floor. Beside the dining table was a large window that allowed one to look into the main hall on the first floor. Chapter 660. After assessing Lin Jie, Liang Jusi picked up the teapot from the table and was just about to pour a cup of tea for Lin Jie when, through the window by the side, he suddenly caught sight of a familiar figure in the hall on the first floor. Liang Jusi's hand froze for a moment before he tilted his head to look at the figure downstairs. That waitress seems to have quite a nice figure. Lin Jie remained calm in response to Liang Jusi's words. In any case, this fellow had always been like this. No matter where he went, he would never forget to look at women. He was already used to it. Ah, I feel like I've seen that younger sister somewhere before. Liang Jusi stroked his chin as he tried to recall the past. It was no wonder he was still a virgin despite his lust for women. How could he say such clumsy words? Did he think that he was Jia Baoyu? Lin Jie casually chuckled at Liang Jusi in his heart before pouring himself a cup of tea. But before he could even take a sip, Liang Jusi suddenly exclaimed loudly, I remember now. I remember now. It's no wonder that younger sister looks so familiar. Isn't she your little fiancé, Brother Jia, Brother Jia? It's really your little fiancé. Amidst Liang Jusi's exclamation, Lin Jie's hand froze for a moment before he raised his head and followed Liang Jusi's line of sight. Am I right? Am I right? That younger sister is your little fiancé, right? Even though I've only seen her a few times, I've always had a deep impression of a beautiful younger sister. But before Liang Jusi could finish his gleeful words, Lin Jie's gaze suddenly fell on him, frightening him into silence. Liang Jusi chuckled mischievously before pouring himself another cup of tea. After gulping it down, he raised his head to look at Lin Jie, only to see the latter's gaze falling on the woman downstairs through the window. Thus, he spoke up, Brother Jia. It's not that I'm mocking you, but it's not like you don't have money. How could you allow your beautiful little fiancé to work outside? Hearing Liang Jusi's words, Lin Jie's face immediately darkened. If he could really make the decisions, would she still be working here? Oblivious to the fact that he had poked at Lin Jie's sore spot, Liang Jusi propped up his chin with one hand and stared at Shi Yao below as he shook his head and said, Brother Jia, you said that you like her, but this is the result of your actions? I felt that this was pure abuse. No, it wasn't just abuse, it was domestic violence. Domestic violence? Do you understand? If your grandfather finds out that you let your little fiancé work outside, your grandfather will definitely break your legs. This job is a bit tiring. Look at how many times we have run back and forth. She's even wearing high heels. What a torture. Liang Jusi muttered to himself for a moment, but after noticing that Lin Jie wasn't moving at all, he turned his head around to take a look. It was only then that he realized that Lin Jie's complexion was truly frightening. Liang Jusi subconsciously shut his mouth and shuffled to a chair a little further away. After a while, the waiter opened the door and served the dishes one after another. After the waiter left, Liang Jusi asked meekly, did I say something wrong? Chapter 661. Lin Jie leisurely ate his meal, looking no different from how he usually ate, as if nothing had happened at all. However, Liang Jusi, who was seated by the side, could clearly feel the immense pressure emanating from Lin Jie's body. Putting aside eating, he didn't even dare to move recklessly. This isn't nothing at all. This is a sign that something big is about to happen. Who would be so foolish as to choose this restaurant for their meal? Liang Jusi took deep breaths before he forced himself to maintain his composure and raised his chopsticks. Throughout the meal, Liang Jusi kept sneaking glances at Lin Jie. He thought that Lin Jie would be looking at the lady outside the window, but around a tea's time later, his gaze didn't even sweep past the area by the window. However, Liang Jusi wasn't as composed as Lin Jie. From time to time, he would extend his neck to look downstairs. Thus, the entire meal was eaten in silence. While Lin Jiej was eating his soup, Liang Jusi happened to be glancing out of the window once more. He turned around to look at the nonchalant Lin Jiej, and after a moment of hesitation, he couldn't help but speak up once more, "Be Brother Jia. Why your belittle fiancée? She doesn't seem to be herself." Lin Jiej's hand froze for a moment, but he didn't raise his head or say a word. It was as if Liang Jusi wasn't there at all as he slowly took a sip of his soup. "This, Brother Jia, are you saying that you don't want to interfere in this matter?" Liang Jusi couldn't help but glance out the window once more. Shi Yao was walking toward the kitchen with a plate in her hand, but her footsteps were clearly a little stiff. Liang Jusi had never been fond of studying, so his friends around him were short-sighted one after another. He was the only one who had good eyesight. When Shi Yao's back was facing him, he noticed that there was a bloodstain on her right high heel. Her foot was torn by her shoe. Liang Jusi turned around to look at Lin Jiej, but the latter was still as impassive as ever. He couldn't help but glance out the window once more, and after a long moment of hesitation, he finally spoke up once more. Her foot was torn by her shoe, and it's bleeding. Lin Jiej couldn't help but tighten his grip on his bowl. Seeing that Lin Jiej wasn't responding, Liang Jusi pondered for a moment before saying, "Why don't I help you take a look? We're quite familiar with the owner of the clubhouse, so I'll let her rest with pay." Before Liang Jusi could finish his words, Lin Jiej glared at him. All right, I won." Liang Jusi quickly compromised before he could finish his words. She wasn't his wife, so why should he be so concerned? Since he couldn't bear to watch and wanted to help, he couldn't just not watch. Out of sight, out of mind, with this thought, Liang Jusi began counting the wolfberries in his. By the time Liang Jusi finished all of the goji berries, he had nothing else to do, so he sat up straight. He was just about to ask Lin Jiej what he was going to play later when he caught sight of Shi Yao outside the window from the corner of his eye. Instinctively, he turned his head around, only to see Shi Yao squatting on the floor, picking up the shattered porcelain bowls. Beside her was a man looking down at her arrogantly. It wasn't as if Liang Jusi had never seen such a sight before. There were quite a few people who had struck it rich overnight, and they liked to make their presence known in such a manner. He was clearly trying to make things difficult for Shi Yao. This time, without any hesitation, he turned to Lin Jiej and said, "Brother Jia?" Chapter 662. This time, without any hesitation, he turned to Lin Jiej and said, "Brother Jia," but barely after saying those two words, he abruptly paused. At some point in time, the calm and composed young man had already left his seat and was standing by the window, staring downstairs with a gloomy look on his face. So, I didn't need to remind him. But then again, his complexion is a little too frightening. He must have been staring at the young lady downstairs for a while now, right? Liang Jusi muttered under his breath. In order to protect his heart, he quickly shifted his gaze away from Lin Jiej and looked out the window. Even though Shi Yao had been working at the clubhouse for several days now, this was the first day she received her uniform. It was rare for her to wear high heels, but it wasn't that she couldn't wear them. It was just that the size of the high heels that the clubhouse had prepared for her wasn't too suitable for her. Initially, she was still able to tolerate it, but as the number of customers increased, and she got busier and busier, her footsteps also increased. As a result, blisters began to form on the back of her feet. When she returned to the kitchen, she took out a Band-Aid and stuck it on her wound, but it didn't seem to help at all. Once one's foot was injured, it would only hurt more and more. Shi Yao didn't want to leave a bad impression on the clubhouse just because she had been working for only a few days, so she tried her best to tolerate it. But who could have thought that she would still end up making a mistake? When she was serving the dishes at table 26, due to the severe pain in her foot, she lost her balance and accidentally broke one of the men's porcelain bowls. In truth, this shouldn't have been a big deal. She should have just apologized, called for the cleaners to clean up the area, and replace the broken porcelain bowls. But it just so happened that she had run into some kind of bad luck today. Perhaps it was because the man was in a bad mood and had a little too much to drink, so he vented his frustrations on her. In any case, no matter how she apologized, the man just wouldn't let her go. He insisted that Yao pick up the broken porcelain bowls one by one right in front of him. So, Yao bent down and picked up the larger fragments of the porcelain bowl with her bare hands, hoping to keep the peace between the both of them. The rest were too broken and difficult to pick up by hand. In addition, the mess here had long disturbed the foreman in charge of the first floor. When the foreman saw that the broken pieces had been picked up, he hurriedly walked over with a broom. He stood in front of the man with a smile and began to apologize with a fawning expression. "Sir, I'm really sorry. I'll help you deal with the remaining broken pieces. I hope you enjoy your meal." As he spoke, the head waiter discreetly shot Yao a glance. Yao knew that the head waiter was signaling for her to leave. The expression on the man's face did not show any signs of improvement because of the arrival of the foreman. After hinting at Yao, the head waiter turned to the man once more and spoke to him amiably. "Sir, you should eat the dishes you ordered while they're hot. They won't taste good when they're cold. Allow me to serve you a bowl of soup." Receiving the signal from the head waiter, Yao held the fragments in her hands and prepared to leave. However, before she could do so, the man suddenly spoke up once more. "Do I not have arms? Do I need you to serve me soup?" Chapter 663. Unexpectedly, the man pointed at her and said, "And you? Didn't I tell you to clean up the debris on the floor? Have you cleaned it up yet?" "Sir, the debris on the floor is simply too fragmented. I can't pick it up with my bare hands, or else it'll hurt my skin. Why don't I get the chef to send you a few dishes that you'd like to eat?" The head waiter apologized profusely as she explained to the man with a gentler voice. However, not only was the man not appeased, he even became even more unreasonable. "What do you mean by that? Are you saying that I'm so poor that I can't even afford to eat here? Do I need you to send me food?" The head waiter could only apologize. "I'm sorry, sir. That's not what I meant. You've misunderstood me this time." The man couldn't even be bothered with the head waiter anymore. He turned to Yao and said, "Are you going to pick it up or not? If not, I'll make a complaint to your boss. In any case, I'm quite familiar with your boss here." "Yes, she's picking it up." The head waiter hurriedly reached out to take the debris from Yao's hands before whispering to Yao, "Hurry up and sweep the area with your broom. Otherwise, the other customers will start complaining too." Yao nodded and walked to the side to grab a broom. In this world, there were always a lot of unreasonable people. For example, at this moment, this man was clearly making things difficult for her. "I'm talking about using your hands to pick it up. Is your hand a broom? Young miss, it's not that I want to criticize you, but you're just a waitress. Do you really think that you're some rich missy? Don't think that I don't know how many women you keep in your clubhouse and what they do for a living. Young miss, do you know which missy I'm referring to? Missy." As the man spoke, he intentionally placed emphasis on the last two words. His vulgar words made Yao feel as if someone had slapped her on the face, and her face reddened. Some people chuckled while others shook their heads, but no one dared to interfere in this matter. Instead, they watched the show with the same attitude. "Why aren't you moving? It can't be that you're really thinking about what young miss means, right? Let me tell you, she's a whore." Before the man could finish his words, a figure, accompanied by a powerful gust of wind, flashed past Yao's eyes. Before Yao could get a clear look at the figure, that arrogant and impolite man was already yanked out of his chair by someone. "Who are you?" Before the man could even speak, he was punched in the face. The strength of the fist was so great that it directly knocked him to the ground. However, the person who hit him didn't stop there. He grabbed his collar and continued to hit his face. The surrounding people let out a few exclamations of surprise at this sudden turn of events. The foreman was frightened by this scene. "Oh my God, this is going to be a big mess." When Yao saw who the culprit was, she tossed the broom in her hand onto the ground and ran over. The manager hurriedly called out to Yao, "Yao, are you trying to stop someone from getting into a fight? You're back." As if she hadn't heard the manager's words at all, just as Linjiej was about to raise his hand to pummel the man on the ground, she quickly grabbed his hand and said, "Stop hitting him." Chapter 664. Only then did Lin Jiej turn around to look at Shi Yao. There was a pleading look in the depths of the young lady's eyes, as if she was afraid that Lin Jiej would hit her once more. She was grabbing her fingers tightly, and they were soft and fair. However, there was a small cut on her left finger, and it was bleeding. Most likely, it was caused by a broken piece of porcelain. Lin Jiej pursed his lips, and his complexion turned even colder. Seeing Lin Jiej's reaction, the manager was afraid that Lin Jiej would swing his fist at Shi Yao, so she anxiously called out to Shi Yao 2 more times. Seeing that Shi Yao wasn't moving at all, she glanced at her surroundings, wondering if she should rush forward to pull Shi Yao away. But all of a sudden, a thought came to her mind and she exclaimed, "Security? What are you waiting for? Call for security." Before the manager could finish her words, she saw an inconceivable sight. The man whom Shi Yao had stopped had actually stopped beating up the man. His face was still as frightening as before, but the aura he was emanating was no longer as intimidating as before. He straightened his body and took 2 steps back. Without even sparing a glance at the man groaning in pain on the floor, he grabbed Shi Yao's arm and dragged her into the elevator. Liang Jusi only realized what was going on after Lin Jiej charged down the stairs and pummeled the man to the floor. He hurriedly stood up and rushed to the elevator. The elevator doors opened, and just as he was about to enter, he saw a displeased Lin Jiej walking out of the elevator with Shi Yao in tow. Liang Jusi quickly retracted his actions and said, "Jia." He only managed to utter a single word before Lin Jiej dragged Shi Yao away. Left with no choice, Liang Jusi turned around and followed the 2 of them. Pushing open the door to the suite, Lin Jiej flung Shi Yao inside. Then, staring into her eyes, he said without any hesitation, "Resign from your job here." Shi Yao frowned. Resign? How could I allow that? This was the part-time job with the best conditions and the best pay that she had picked out from the many resumes she had. Furthermore, the hiring conditions here were extremely harsh, and it wasn't easy for her to get in. Noticing her silence, Lin Jiej spoke up once more. "If you're not going to speak up, I'll speak up for you. I'm very familiar with the boss here. It's not that I'm trying to nag at you, but little fiancé. No, I mean Brother Jia's little fiancé. If you don't have any money, you can just ask Brother Jia for it. Why are you working here? Do you know that the people here are all influential figures in Beijing? They all know the Lin family. If they find out that you're Brother Jia's fiancé, you'll really be a disgrace to Brother Jia by working as a waitress here." Scram. Before Liang Jusi could finish his prattling, Lin Jiej had already bellowed at him. He was so frightened that he immediately shut his mouth. Then, he pointed at the door and said, "I'll help you deal with the mess downstairs." Before he could finish his words, Liang Jusi had already disappeared. As Liang Jusi closed the door behind him, only the 2 of them were left in the massive suite. Lin Jiej was vexed, but Shi Yao was silent. Amidst such an atmosphere, after a long time, Lin Jiej finally relented and spoke up first. However, the words that came out of his mouth carried an irrefutable force. "Yao Yao, it's a deal then. Resign from your job here. I'll help you." Chapter 665. "Yao Yao, it's a deal then. Resign from your job here, and I'll help you." As he spoke, Lin Jiej took out his phone and began scrolling through the phone numbers. Standing in front of him, Shi Yao stared at his movements for a moment before saying, "But I don't want to quit my job here." Lin Jiej's fingers suddenly froze. He lowered his eyelids and stared at his phone screen for a moment before suppressing the agitation raging in his chest. He tried his best to calm his voice and said, "Yao Yao, you're still in school. Your main task at the moment is to study. After you graduate, you can always find a proper job. There's no need for you to be in such a hurry to earn money. Besides, the job here isn't suitable for you." Shi Yao fell silent, but she had her own thoughts in mind. If the job here wasn't suitable for her, where else could she find a job suitable for her? They were from different worlds. If her grandfather hadn't suddenly come to their house 6 years ago, and her father hadn't asked her to become his fiancée because of that 1 million yuan, she might have lost her father. Then, she and her mother might have been living a hard life, relying on each other for survival. Maybe it was so hard that they had to worry about their 3 meals a day. At that time, Who would care if this kind of job was suitable for her or not? Moreover, her family was her family, and his was his family. Just because of a marriage contract, her family could not rely on his family to live a carefree life. This was completely unreasonable. There were so many people who got married in this world, but which of them had to support their wife's family after they got married? Not to mention, she and Lin Jiej hadn't even gotten married yet, and her family had already used up so much of his money. There was no reason for her to not return the money. After all, how many brothers and sisters had borrowed money from them? Seeing that Shi Yao wasn't saying anything, Lin Jiej felt even more irritated. He knew that she was earning money to repay him and the Lin family, but it was precisely because of this that he felt inexplicably vexed. He slightly closed his eyes, suppressing the fire that kept burning in his heart, continuing to compromise. Yao Yao, if you really want to work, it is also okay. I can help you find other things to do. In short, the work here is not good. Lin Jiej paused for a moment before continuing. It just so happens that I've registered a company in the next few days. If you really want to work part-time, why don't you come over and help me? Shi Yao's fingers trembled, and she subconsciously tightened her grip on her clothes. Pursing her lips, she lowered her head and replied softly, I don't have to work here. A hint of joy flashed across the depths of Lin Jiej's eyes, but it only lasted for an instant before he suddenly realized something and asked, Is it because of what Liang Juicy said earlier? Yao Yao, I'm not saying this because you're a disgrace to me or the Lin family just because you're working here. I know. Shi Yao understood what Lin Jiej was trying to say, so she spoke up before he could finish his words. On this point, she believed in him and the Lin family. At most, they would feel that she had been wronged, but they would not feel ashamed because she was a waitress. However, Liang Juicy's words actually made sense. They didn't think it was embarrassing, but it was inevitable that others would gossip about them. In the end, they didn't want the Lin family to suffer unnecessary criticism because of them. Chapter 666. Not working at my place. Lin Jiej silently pursed his lips tightly as he stared at Shi Yao for a very long time before he finally spoke up. Even though he had tried his best to restrain his emotions, his tone was still a little cold. That's G University's library. I'll have my grandfather talk to the library and have you work there. You'll be dealing with G University's students, and today's incident wouldn't have happened. If you don't want to work at the school library, that's fine too. I'll help you find a reliable tutor to tutor you in your English. Or, I can help you contact a tuition class, and you can become a part-time teacher there. In just a short moment, Lin Jiej had already given Shi Yao several solutions. Seeing that she was still silent, he continued, Or, I know some people who might need a translator. You can help them translate some documents, and you'll be able to accumulate some work experience. Before Lin Jiej could finish his words, Shi Yao, who had been silent for a long time, suddenly spoke up, Thank you, Lin Jiej. Lin Jiej was taken aback by her sudden gratitude. Following which, Shi Yao moved her lips and said, I appreciate your goodwill, but it's my own job. I'll think of a way myself, so there's no need to trouble you. There's no need to trouble you. Her polite and distant words finally ignited the fire that had been suppressed in Lin Jiej's heart for an entire day, no, several days. It's not that you don't want to trouble me, but that you don't want to have anything to do with me, right? What in the world was that? All she wanted was to rely on herself, and she didn't want to rely on him or the Lin family. How did it become that she didn't want to have anything to do with him? A slight frown appeared on Shi Yao's forehead. She couldn't understand where Lin Jiej's sudden temper came from. I saw your account book when I was in Chengdu. The reason why you're in such a hurry to earn money is because you want to distance yourself from me completely, isn't that right? Some words were better left unsaid, but as soon as they were spoken, Lin Jiej realized that he couldn't suppress the frustration in his chest no matter how hard he tried. She remembered each and every account in detail. Wasn't the reason why she was working now so that she wouldn't get involved with him as soon as possible? Be it him or the other members of the Lin family, they only gave her money because they doted on her. But what happened in the end? They ended up becoming her burden? What did that man just scold her for? Miss, poor. If it wasn't for the fact that he couldn't control himself and threw a punch at her, What would she have done to him? Should he compromise and bear with it, and then really use his hands to pick up the fragments on the ground? Yes, in order to sever all ties with him, she could endure anything. Even now, she didn't even want his help. He wanted to keep her, but could he? She was a living person. Was he really going to forcefully kidnap a commoner girl? But he couldn't bear for her to work and be bullied. The more Lin Jiej thought about it, the more pain he felt in his chest. He stared at Shuyao for a moment before speaking up once more. Fine. Haven't you been thinking about canceling our engagement? I promise you, all right? Also, if you're making money just to distance yourself from me and the Lin family, then you don't have to do this. Chapter 667. After saying those words, Lin Jiej stared at Shuyao for a moment longer before saying, You've gotten what you wanted. Are you satisfied now? Then, he didn't stay any longer and turned to leave. It was only when the door to the suite was slammed shut that Shuyao blinked her eyes and came back to her senses. Lin Jiej, is he angry? And it's because he thinks that I'm returning the money to sever ties with him and the Lin clan. So he's so angry? She did need to return the money, but it's only right for her to do so. It's not like she's trying to sever ties with him or the Lin clan. But that last sentence of his was a little too hurtful. What did he mean by, I've been the Lin clan's fiancé for 6 years, so it's only right for me to receive some remuneration? With such thoughts in mind, Shuyao couldn't help but puff up her cheeks as she cursed Lin Jiej in her heart. Stop looking down on me. I don't want that bit of remuneration from him. So what if you're rich? You'll still starve to death even if you don't eat. Shuyao puffed up her cheeks once more as she stood on the spot, fuming for a moment. For some reason, Lin Jiej's words suddenly flashed across her mind. Haven't you been thinking of canceling your engagement with me all this while? I'll agree to it, all right? As if someone had cast a spell on her, the resentment in her heart dissipated in an instant, only to be replaced by an indescribable emptiness. How strange. I've always been the one who didn't want to marry him. A few days ago, I was still sending him a message urging him to find a way to lay all his cards on the table. Today, I finally got what I wanted, just like how he coldly asked me before he left. Are you satisfied now that you've gotten what you wanted? But why didn't I feel as relaxed and free as I had imagined? Shuyao stood in a daze in the suite for a very long time. It wasn't until the door was pushed open and a waiter came in to tidy up her belongings that she collected her thoughts and walked out. Just like what she had promised Lin Jiej, she really went downstairs to find the manager and resign. Perhaps it was because Lin Jiej or Liang Jusi had spoken to the staff here, but they didn't make things difficult for her. In fact, they even settled her wages for the past few days. After taking off her uniform and changing into her own clothes, Shuyao left the clubhouse and took a bus back to school. It was already 10 o'clock in the evening, and both sides of the road were brightly lit. Leaning against the window of the bus, Shuyao stared at the night sky that was constantly retreating. She couldn't help but recall the words that Lin Jiej had said to her before he left. As the car swayed, the distance between them and G University grew closer and closer. For some reason, Shuyao's heart was growing more and more chaotic. Ever since their parting at the clubhouse that day, Lin Jiej and Shuyao hadn't met again. Before the quarrel, Lin Jiej and Shuyao rarely contacted each other, and after that day, the two of them didn't look for each other at all. On top of that, Lin Jiej was already in his 4th year of university, and he didn't have any classes to attend. Most likely, he didn't return to the academy to stay at all, so Shuyao, who spent her days in the academy, didn't see Lin Jiej at all. Nevertheless, Shuyao could still occasionally hear some news about Lin Jiej from He Tiantian, who would visit the campus for him every day. For example, Lin Jiej registered a company. Another example would be Lin Jiej's results from the previous semester, and he was still at the top of the class. Chapter 668. However, most of the time when He Tiantian brought up Lin Jiej, Shuyao didn't say anything at all. Instead, she continued munching on her apple, sipping on her yogurt, watching her drama series, and munching on potato chips. Just as Shuyao had said, after she left the clubhouse, she found a new part-time job, tutoring English for Year 3 students who lived in a school district near her school. As for her salary, it was nowhere near what she was getting from the clubhouse, but Shuryao had no better options, so she could only muddle through it. There were no classes on Saturdays and Sundays, so Shuryao's tutoring time was slightly longer than usual. It just so happened that the students she had to tutor were given a lot of homework by the school, so her time was slightly longer than usual. She tutored from afternoon to night. At around 8 o'clock, Shuryao's phone rang. It was her mother. She stared at the screen for a while, not picking up the call. In truth, her mother had called her several times recently, but she didn't pick up any of them. The student who was doing his homework was distracted by her phone. He turned to look at Shuryao, only to see her staring at the screen in a daze. He couldn't help but ask, "Sis Yao, are you going to pick up the call?" Recovering from her daze, Shuryao gently told the student, "Continue with your homework." After that, she put her phone into silent mode and placed it in her bag. By the time Shuryao was done with her tutoring, it was already 10 o'clock at night. As it was getting late, the students' parents were a little worried. Furthermore, it wasn't too far from the school, so they sent Shuryao off with the intention of taking a stroll. On the way back to her dormitory room, Shuryao took out her phone to take a look. There were a total of 8 missed calls, all from her mother. Just as she was hesitating whether she should return the call or not, another call came in. It was from her mother as well. Shuryao hesitated for a moment before answering the call. Yao, what's wrong with you? Why aren't you picking up the call?" As it was a video call, Shuryao's mother noticed that Shuryao was still outside, so she spoke up once more. "Why aren't you back yet? Did you go out to play? With who? Jij?" It wasn't that her mother hadn't asked her similar questions in the past, but as she had witnessed her quarrel with her father, her mother's words left her feeling a little uncomfortable. However, she still replied softly, "No, I just came out to buy something." "Oh, is that so?" Shuryao's mother didn't linger on the matter for too long. She raised her phone and pointed it at the various boxes of wedding candies on the table and said, "Take a look. These are the samples that someone sent over today. Which one do you like?" "Your father and I went to the Lin family this afternoon, and Grandpa Lin said that we live in the suburbs. After you married into the Lin family, he noticed that it's inconvenient for your father and I to live in a place near their place. So, he arranged a place for us to live in. They live in the heart of the city, so it's bound to be expensive. So, your father said that the smallest house would do, just big enough for the two of us. Speaking of which, Grandpa Lin really treats our family." Chapter 669. What's wrong? As Shuryao's mother flipped through the invitation cards on the table, she said, "I think this one is pretty good. What do you think?" Yao? Ignoring her mother's words, Shuryao called out once more, "Mom." Sensing that something was amiss with her daughter, Shuryao's mother turned to look at her phone camera and asked, "What's wrong?" Shuryao was silent for a moment before replying, "Can I not get married?" "What nonsense are you spouting? Which woman doesn't want to get married?" "No, I mean, can I not marry Lin Jij?" After saying those words, Shuryao took a deep breath and decided to voice out her thoughts. "Can you not hold this marriage? Also, you and my dad should give up on that house as well. If you really want a house, I'll buy it for you when I earn some money." Before Shuryao could finish her words, her father's face suddenly appeared on the phone screen. "Shuryao, what nonsense are you talking about? What do you mean by giving up on the marriage? It's already decided. Do you think you can just give up on it just because you say so? Let me tell you, it's your fortune that the Lin family has taken a liking to you. Don't be so stubborn. There are plenty of women who yearn for such an opportunity. Did you get into a fight with Jij? Let me tell you, don't provoke him. You have to coax him. If he doesn't want you anymore." Shuryao's eyes reddened, and before her father could finish his words, she had already hung up the call. Soon, her phone vibrated once more. It was her mother again. Shuryao hung up the call, but her phone vibrated once more, so she switched it off. Peace returned to her hands, but Shuryao's heart felt even more sorrowful. She stood on the sidewalk for a moment before running to the field not too far away. Squatting down in a corner, she began crying. It was true that Lin Jij hadn't been back to Ji University recently, but since it was the weekend, he had promised to play basketball with Xia Shangzhou and Lu Benlai, so he went to school after lunch. After the game, the three of them returned to their dormitory room and rested for a while before taking a shower and changing into clean clothes. After that, they headed out for dinner. Lin Jie drove over, and due to the convenience of having a car, the three of them decided to eat at a place a little further away from the school. There was a traffic jam on the way there, and it was already 8 o'clock by the time they finished eating and returned to school. It was almost 10 o'clock. Initially, Lin Jie was intending to leave Xia Shangzhou and Lu Binlai at the entrance of the academy before heading home. However, he suddenly remembered that he needed to copy some information from the dormitory room's computer, so he parked his car by the roadside and entered the academy together with them. On his way back to his dormitory room, he had to pass through the field. Just like that, he was stopped by a young lady who forcefully stuffed a light pink box into his hands. Xia Shangzhou leaned over. "What is it? Let me have a look." Lu Binlai also walked over and said, "It's not like it's for you. So what are you looking at?" Xia Shangzhou. "Then why are you here?" Lu Binlai. "I came over to look at your envious face." Xia Shangzhou wanted to kick Lu Binlai. "You bastard!" Lu Binlai nimbly dodged to the side, but just as he was about to retaliate, a figure squatting at a dark corner of the field caught his attention. He stared at the figure for a moment, and as if confirming something, he turned to Lin Jie and asked, "Boss, isn't that little Junior?" Xia Shangzhou looked in the direction that Lu Binlai was pointing at. "That's right, it's little Junior. Why is she sitting there alone? She seems to be crying." You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.